Welcome to the show, folks. This is Wrestling Changed My Life. Here we go.
We both threw a punch at the same time. He threw a right hand, and I threw a left hook. And I still have a picture, and it's like literally like this close. He just barely landed it before me, and just caught me flush. And I just remember backing up against the ropes, and I backed up, and I went to go, tighten up. He threw an uppercut, split my gloves, and I dropped.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
If I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Changed My Life. My guest today is Steve Orosco. Steve is a really interesting cat. He's the CEO of Smash Global Sports and Entertainment, which is an MMA organization that puts on MMA fights in a super nice black tie gala-like experience. He says it's kind of taking MMA from NASCAR to Formula One. And so that's what he does now. But back in the day, he was a Wall Street broker, then he was a pro MMA fighter. And this guy just has a lot of energy, and I love talking to him. Fan of the week goes to Vegas Vince JJ. That's Vegas _Vince _JJ on the gram. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. And from the looks of things, just had a pretty cool experience training with the great Gordon Ryan. So Vince, thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciated, my friend. And this episode is also brought to you by nothing, folks. It's brought to you by the gratitude that I have for all of you tuning in. Thank you so much. Keep on tuning. 2020 is going to be an incredible year. I have so many plans in the works. More docu-series, more content on the website that I can't announce just yet, but we will soon. So thank you so much. Now let's give it up for Steve Orosco. All right, folks, we're here with Steve Orosco, fighting entrepreneur. Man, he does it all. How you doing, Steve?
I'm good. How are you today?
Outstanding. Really excited to have this conversation, man. I got to tell you, your energy and your enthusiasm is infectious just from reading about you, man. So I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Anything wrestling, that's my soul. Feeds my soul.
So we were just talking, and if you're watching this on the video, you can see Steve has a cut above the eye. How'd you get back into wrestling in the past year here?
Obviously when I was fighting, wrestling is such a big fabric of practice. Of pro practices and getting ready for fights. And for me, wrestling was my everything, and it still is. It's like riding a bike. If I didn't wrestle for a year and I got back on the mat, it's like, everything. So long story short, last year, so I have a niece who, a female, she's a freshman at Amity High School. And I'm kind of a role model. I didn't realize I was her role model. And she started wrestling because I wrestled. And she asked me one day if I would come down and just, run a practice. And I said, of course I would. And that I just fell in love with all those kids. It brought back all my high school memories, which for me is, high school. I'm trying to think. When it comes to wrestling, high school is such a big part of your life.
Yeah.
And if I have to say, of all the people that made the most impact, it was my high school wrestling coach, because they gave you so much of their time, on and off the mat. So it just brought back all those memories. And that one practice turned into me coaching and helping every single practice for almost a whole season while I was back in Connecticut. Wow. So ironically, we moved back to Connecticut in in July to test it out for a year. I'm still back and forth between LA, and I'm going to be coaching this entire winter. So I'm really excited about that. So this black eye happened because, sometimes two people shoot at the same time. You collide heads. One person usually takes more of the wrath than the other. And I literally had I got a cut over my eyebrow.
Mm-hmm.
And my eye was fine, but you know how it is. No one sees what happens the next day once it swells. So now all the blood is behind my eyelid, so it looks worse than what it is.
Yeah. It looks good, though, man. I tell you what, I coached high school for a couple years right when I was out of the competitive ranks. And, man, going on a journey with a team, like a season journey, you learn so much about those kids, and there's so many ups and downs. And as a coach, you don't really realize the impact you're making, but kids will come up to you 10 years later and be like, Coach Warner, do you remember this or that? And they remember all these stories, man. So, God, I'm excited for you that you get to go through a whole season with the high school team.
Me too. And the most ironic thing was so last year, I really worked with these two kids, and they were basically the weight class below me and my weight class, who didn't make states last year, and they both made states after we worked together. And I literally just whooped their ass every day. They couldn't take me down. I would level change so much they would fall. And they were just amazing kids, and I fell in love with them both. One kid graduated, but one kid is still there. And the kid that's still there, he placed 8th at state, which is, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the 7 kids above him all graduated.
Oh, wow.
So he comes into kind of the season ranked number 1. So it's just going to be me and him all year. So my goal is state champ for you. This scar right here in my eyebrow is my state champ scar. You better fucking win states.
Get it done, baby.
Get it done.
So you're the CEO of Smash Global right now, a fight promotion company, I guess you could say.
Yep.
And you've had an incredible career, but let's go back to the grassroots, man. Where did you grow up, and what was your family life like growing up as a kid? How'd you get involved with wrestling from there?
Yeah, I'm a small town New England kid. I'm from the baby state of Rhode Island.
Okay.
A good childhood. I think a childhood that I wish more kids had now today. Climbing trees, throwing rocks at buses, playing sports every season. I had a good childhood. It was all about my friends and sports.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I like to say I'm an only child, but I'm not.
Okay.
So me and my sister were 10 years apart.
Yeah.
I think when you're 10 years apart, I mean, obviously now me being 38 and her being 28, we're super tight. But growing up, when I was 14, high school, 15, she was 5.
Yeah.
So it's almost like 2 only children.
And then how did you get involved with wrestling as a young kid?
Oh, man, I'm trying to think how the first day I stepped on the mat. My father didn't want me to box. He always wanted me to wrestle. And then I just found it. I actually started playing basketball first.
Okay.
And I remember being at basketball practice and kids were wrestling. And I was just watching up because they were on the court and the mats were upstairs. I remember watching up and seeing these kids wrestle and my coach yelling at me, "You want to fucking wrestle? Get off this court and go wrestle." And the whole time I'm like, so the next season I didn't play basketball. I went upstairs and started wrestling. And the first time I wrestled, I swear to God, it was like goosebumps. I mean, I got my ass whooped. So I remember my freshman year, I came in and we had a returning state champion at 119. And then the kid who was a 103 was also an all-stater. Now, I was only 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So I had to wrestle 112, which happens. It was empty weight class. But not only that, I also got my ass whooped by a state champ every day and a kid who was all-state every day. And I think I just learned so much from that.
Mm-hmm.
Just constantly getting your ass kicked, getting beat up, and coming back for more. And some kids quit and some kids love it. And I just happened to be wired in a way that I actually enjoyed it. It just drove me. And then, and not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
So my first wrestling match I ever had in high school, I wrestled a kid and I pinned him in 44 seconds. And I thought I was the fucking man, right? I'm going around school. Everyone's like, "Oh, Steve, you're fucking good, da-da-da." The next match, and this is so embarrassing, I never talk about it, I got pinned in 9 seconds. So I know. So literally, so my first home match, it was against Coventry. Coventry High School in Rhode Island was like the school, like the Iowa of the 80s, who 30 state championships in a row. I went against the returning state champion for my first home mat. Ooh. And he really right off the whistle, took double leg takedown. I didn't have a chance to roll right to my back. And it was like 1, 2, 3, done. I was like, what the fuck just happened? And I think that just drove me so much too. I was like, I need more of this. That can never happen again.
Well, it takes a rare person to look at those type of obstacles and turn them into opportunities for them. And you certainly seem like that kind of guy. And, man, wrestling just brings that out of people, doesn't it?
It does. It's so crazy. You know, on the way to the first captain's practice, so my cousin Ariana, she's like, yeah, we've already had a few kids quit. And I'm like, oh, that's like the best thing is having such hard practices and weeding out those kids who don't love it, because to get killed like that and work like that, you have to truly love it, and it has to feed your soul.
Yeah.
You can't just because wrestling, you don't play wrestling.
Right.
You know?
Right. Exactly. No, it's funny. My girlfriend knows nothing about wrestling, and I'm an absolute nut. And so I've been trying to fill her in and just get her up to speed. But man, unless you've done it, it's hard to understand what we're talking about sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And so how did you go from this, like wrestling in high school, and you sent me some pictures, you had some encounters with Gable and Brands, and then you went into banking. Like, kind of what was your journey from then through, next thing you know, you're working on Wall Street and you're a little unhappy with your life, and then you kind of, what was that path like?
Yeah, well, when it comes to, I'm the kind of guy who, I want to go to the epicenter of everything. Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, when I was in high school, after my first year of wrestling, I was like, oh man, I got some catching up to do. I want to get better. So I went to Dan Gable's wrestling camp, and they had at the time, I know it's different now, but at that time, this was like 1997, they had like the 6-day technique camp and the 14-day intensive training camp. Mm-hmm. And I did both. So I went for the first 6 days, stayed for another 14 days. And that was one of the first times I really got pushed in a way I've never been. I mean, you're 15 years old, first time ever being away from home, in a dorm with a bunch of other wrestlers doing stupid shit. And then your coaches. So my coach was, the first year, it was Tom Brands, and it was Douglas Schwab. Mm-hmm. And oh man, I got my ass whipped. And those guys, that was the first time I ever saw a level of wrestling I've never seen before. I remember the first day they bring me to the auditorium, and they're putting the highlight reels on. And I still remember the highlight reel, and it was, remember Mike Mena?
Oh, yeah, dude. Illinois legend, 4-time state champ in Illinois.
Yeah, so I remember him, and he was my coach the second year. And I remember seeing him. He, like, went for a takedown, like, threw the guy onto, like, the ref table. And I was like, holy shit. It was him and, like, Joe Williams. Oh. I was like, these guys are monsters. I want to fucking be those guys.
Yep.
You know, and it's just never went away. And you know, when you go to a camp like that, the kids that go there are the real serious kids. You got state champions from all over the country. Mm-hmm. And I got my ass whipped. I'm from Little Rhode Island. So Rhode Island, you have like, I don't know, 75 schools like wrestling.
Yeah.
So I'm going against kids that are state champions from Florida and kids from Iowa. And it was such an eye opener. And I loved it, and I still fucking love it. Still. So yeah, so like for example, wrestling went to Epicenter. I thought Iowa was the best at the time, so I went there. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in college, you know, when you want to go to college, you really don't know what you want to fucking do.
Right.
Like you're 18 years old. How can you truly know? Unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, I guess. And I remember seeing a movie called Boiler Room.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, those guys look like they have a good time. I want to be one of those guys. So so what do I have to do? Okay, I got to work on Wall Street. And I started looking in the stock market. It looks fun. Obviously, you don't really know the back end and what really goes on. And Pace University was the closest school to Wall Street. So I said, I'm going to go to Pace University. So I went to Pace University, and I did my across the street, cross street from 45 Wall Street, on the corner of Wall Street and William. Did my time on Wall Street, and then I got recruited by a firm called Barnum Financial Group in Connecticut, and that's what ended up bringing me to Connecticut.
Okay.
For the next chapter.
Dude, it's so funny you say that about the Epicenter and Boiler Room. So my day job is technology sales. So I used to work at Salesforce, And
Okay.
like I lived in San Francisco for 5 years because that's the epicenter of technology sales, right? Kind of in your generation, Wall Street, that was the thing. And then now I feel like technology is so popular that like the reps out there, it's kind of like that Boiler Room mentality. So we would watch Boiler Room all the time, man. It's like, you see this fucking grin on my face?
Yes.
I love that scene, dude. So at this point, are you starting to kind of have a yearning to get back to physical activity and being kind of an entrepreneur? Because obviously you have that. I mean, how did you go from that where you're making good money, you have the prototypical great job? Are you starting to sense some unhappiness? Like, how did you kind of make the transition back into the wrestling and fighting world?
Yeah, I mean, there came a point where I just wanted more. I wasn't just being fulfilled. And again, I think like some people are passion driven and some people can just do the Groundhog Day and they're okay with that. And that's fine. You need both kind of personalities in the world. And one's not better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
I just had to be very passion driven. So when I was getting unhappy, I went back to school and I went to Albertus Magnus, which is, local here. I got my MBA and my MS. Kind of, when I feel like getting your master's degree, it's really good. It's a good way to take a break to figure out what you want to do. Obviously, I was still working, but I figured, well, let me get my MBA and I'll figure it out, and maybe I'll do something bigger. I just knew there was something more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the kind of guy who wants to just get up and work for a paycheck. And if you're in finance, that's what you do. You're literally just working for money. Unless you truly love, ticker symbols and doing all that research and sales, it just didn't feed my soul. So back in 2007, when I graduated, got my MBA. I was also married at the time. I got married very young. I was 24 years old.
Okay.
And again, 24 is too young to get married.
Young guy.
Yeah. So we were married for 2.5 years. We separated. And at the time, I would go to San Diego. My best friend in high school, who was all-state track star, collegiate football athlete, he moved to San Diego as well. He started working at a place called the Boxing Club and teaching boxing classes, doing strength and conditioning. And I used to go out and visit him. And when I was there, I was like, holy shit, I love this. So I would go there. And because he worked in the gym, I literally lived in the gym with him. I go to work with him. I train like 3 or 4 times a day. I said, this is what I want to do, live in California and just train. And as soon as I separated, I literally packed my car, drove across country, stayed in Motel 6 for a week. And the boxing club actually, he got me a job at the boxing club. So I went from making great money to making like $15 an hour teaching boxing classes, but I was so happy. And then that was just the evolution of fighting, of getting.
Now, was the UFC getting any mainstream at this point, or was it still kind of dark days for the UFC and like that kind of MMA world?
Yeah, they're so mainstream.
Okay.
They literally, was it last year when WME, which is basically the biggest talent agency in Hollywood. There's like the big 2 or 3, like WME, CAA, they represent everyone. And WME bought the UFC for $4.2 billion, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, and between that and then this past year, the UFC locking in a deal with with ESPN, I think it was 5 years, $300 million, something like that. So now it's super mainstream.
Well, no, now, I mean, I'm a huge fan, but I'm saying, like, back when you were in San Diego then, did anyone even know? Like, was it kind of, because, like, back in the day, if you watched UFC, it was kind of like saying you watched porn. Like, it was really taboo, like, in, like, 05, 06. And Pat Milicic is from my hometown area. So, like, everyone knew the Pat Milicic, the Croatian sensation, and the Milicic camp was in my hometown. Like, all these guys, like Robbie Lawler, Jens Pulver, Matt Hughes, the great wrestling Matt Hughes. So you're in San Diego, it's probably still a little taboo. No one really knows about UFC yet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so. It was 10 years ago, so 2009. So I want to say that is coming. So for me, another thing, so at the time, San Diego was also the epicenter for MMA.
Mm-hmm.
All the best gyms were there, and all the fighters were there because, I mean, let's be real, jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu is what started MMA.
Right.
That was the foundation. And all those Brazilians either went to South Florida or San Diego when they migrated here. So there was such a hotbed of jiu-jitsu players in San Diego, which just transitioned into MMA.
Yeah. And then how did you go from just doing that? I mean, I can kind of guess because you're such a fanatic, kind of like the rest of us. You go from training at a gym to now you're like, shit, I want to fight. And then you have a pro career. I mean, like, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, I always just need more. I'm like never satisfied. Like I want us to make it to the top if I can. And if I fail, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to try it. And if I don't, it will literally ruin me. Not ruin me, but I can't stop. I won't be able to stop thinking about it. You know, like for example, I still want to fight one more time. And it's only because my last fight, I went out on a loss, and I went on a loss that I feel like I shouldn't have went out on. But I think about 10 times a day, and I feel like that's what still drives me.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because I've read about that experience for you, and it was kind of it seems like a turning point, because you had a lot of realizations, and you had to really dig deep by yourself, kind of when you were in the hotel room after that fight. And just talk us through the setting. So I believe you're in Australia at the time, and you have the fight, and kind of what happened, and what transpired after the fact.
Yeah, so I went to Australia. I was 8-0 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I got the opportunity to fight their number one kid, and number one kid in Australia. His name was Nick Patterson. I believe he was like 17-4 at the time.
Okay.
More of a striker than a wrestler. So for me as a wrestler, I was like, oh man, I'm just gonna take this kid down and pound him, And that was my game plan. So I got there. I felt amazing. I had to cut a little too much weight. Not that's an excuse. It was my fault regardless. I had to cut 20 pounds the week of the fight, which is I usually cut about 15, but the extra 5 pounds is a lot. So this first time I ever fought away, no family, no friends, super motivated, and I felt amazing, like I said, but something was off that night. I remember going into the cage. Can you still see me? It says poor connection on my end.
Yeah, I can still see it. It does say it on mine as well, but
okay.
I can still hear you. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right, cool. Sorry. So I remember walking out to the cage. I felt great. Everyone's saying, fuck America, because we were the main event. Australians are very aggressive, which I love. And I still felt great. And I remember getting into the ring. I never fought in a ring. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. As a wrestler, you want to be in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the ring. And I remember when they called his name, he walked out. The crowd was so loud. I was like, oh shit. And then he gets in the ring. And then this is when I really felt it for the first time. So I get in the ring, they call my name, do my call outs, boo, boo, boo. Cool, I'm okay with that. Then they did his name. And I swear, and I'm not even fucking exaggerating, the crowd was so loud that the ring like literally shook under my feet a little bit. And I was like, and I looked across the ring because I'm a very like, let me stare at this guy and let me,
Yeah.
And man, he had that glimmer in his eye, man, like walking on water. There's no way I'm losing tonight. So I think like that played a part of it. So the bell rang. Obviously, everything's working out okay. I normally come out very hard and fast as a wrestler. It's also because I wasn't only 8 pro fights. I wasn't super composed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like raw instincts. So I came out and I was like pitter patter. Threw a couple light jabs, landing a couple light kicks. I was giving him the feeling out process, which I never do, which means I gave him too much respect. And he was kind of feeling me out too, because I think he thought I was going to take him down quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then we both threw a punch at the same time. He threw a right hand and I threw a left hook. And I still have a picture, and it's like literally like this close. Like he just barely landed it before me. And just caught me flush. And I just remember backing up against the ropes. And I backed up and I went to go, tighten up. He threw an uppercut, split my gloves, and I dropped. And the story that I always say, man, because it's never happened to me before. I was shell-shocked. I remember being on all fours. My nose is pouring blood. He's behind, and I see it on the mat, and I'm like, oh, shit. He's behind me, just raining down punches. And again, like, you don't feel it because adrenaline,
right.
but the sound just sounds like gunshots, like boom, boom, boom. I'm in my corner, so my cornerman's yelling at me. The crowd is so loud, I can't hear myself think. The referee, I can still hear him. Improve your position, improve your position. And before you know it, was ding, 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 and the fight was over. And that probably 5 seconds felt like an eternity. And I just couldn't hear myself think. And what frustrates me is if I was more experienced and composed, I would have did what you're supposed to do. Turn over, pull guard, get your composure back, and then fight again. But I didn't do that, and then it was over. So it still drives me crazy, which is why I want to run it back one more time.
Right.
Oh yeah, and like you said, you know, the hotel room. So with fights over, everyone goes out and parties. I'm the kind of person that, yes, I love to party, but I just lost. Like I need to reflect. I want to be by myself. And I was in that hotel room by myself in the dark, no friends, no family. And like I kind of said to you, I think you said in the email,
Yeah.
like I felt like Chris Tucker in that movie Friday. He was in the pigeon coop after, smoking that angel dust. And I was like, like an outer body experience. Like, what am I going to do with my life? Because I've never felt that level of like, I would say failure, like uncontrollable failure.
Right.
And I just felt very helpless. And at that moment, I was like, man, I was 33. I had a 1-year-old son at home. I had 3 knee surgeries. I had shoulder surgery, broken this, broken that. And I was like, I think coming from a white collar background in the first place, I knew I was just rational. I'm like, the chances of me being the next George St. Pierre at the time, it's pretty slim. I would have to fight a few more times, get into the UFC. Plus, once in the UFC, you're talking another 5, 6 fights to get to the top. I didn't have another 10 fights in me, not at 34. There's no way, as much as I loved it. So I said to myself, what do I want to do next? What can I do next? Go back into finance. That's kind of the last resort. Or it was open up my own gym, have my own fight team. But at the time, my rationale was, stupid as it sounds, I don't want to clean mats at 10 p.m. at night. I don't want to be at the gym opening it up at 5 a.m. I don't want to do that. What can I do on the business side to make MMA better?
Right.
And the only thing that I didn't love about my sport, I shouldn't say love, but the only thing that I felt could improve was the crowd. Like you said, it wasn't too long ago that it was very taboo. And when it was taboo, it was very tap out t-shirts and Bud Lights because it came from such a grassroots feeling. Like in Iowa.
Yeah.
There's no rules and there's no weight classes. There's no sanctioning. Guys weren't multifaceted. But it's evolved so fast in such a short period of time that the crowd hasn't really evolved with it. Like in boxing, you don't go to a local MMA show and see people in suits and ties and women in gowns. Everyone at a local MMA show are literally friends and family of the fighter, and that's it. So how do I draw in a whole new crowd? How do I draw in the Formula One crowd as opposed to the NASCAR crowd? How do we get the boxing crowd to convert to MMA? So I said, I'm going to get my license. I'm going to be the next Dana White in my own niche.
Yep.
And I'm going to do it in a ballroom, in a black tie setting, which they do in boxing, but no one's taking the risk to do it in MMA. So now with my company, Smash Global, I have the cage in the center of a ballroom, and I do 25 to 30 tables of 10. It's black tie and gown. It's red carpet. It's a lot of celebrities and media. And you're eating dinner while you're watching these fights. So it's like a 4-course meal, open bar, the whole 9.
God, that sounds awesome, man. And you're exactly right about the boxing. My dad, even though he got us into wrestling, and I would think that he'd like UFC because MMA and Bellator and all these organizations give wrestlers some real money finally, but he hated it. He hates it to this day. He loves boxing because it's like the good old days. It's like Sugar Ray Leonard versus Hager. Like he has these great memories in his mind, and I grew up watching those fights too. And it's a little bit more class than UFC for whatever reason. And I love MMA, like no matter what the organization, but I love that you're taking that approach to it. So how has it been received so far? How many fights have you guys done?
I've done 8 with my 9th one coming next month on the 19th.
Okay, man. So talk to us a little bit about kind of the business side of things and kind of like your daily routines. I mean, how do you go about managing this company? Is it just you running it? Do you have a lot of staff? I mean, what are some of like the things that go on behind the scenes that we wouldn't know about just from the outside looking in?
Yeah, so when I started, I was a one man band, which was it's a bittersweet thing. It's great because you learn everything about everything. You know, I was a producer, I did the sales, I was the matchmaker. So I developed a good relationship with the athletic commission. Like I did everything, the raising of money for charity. And as I've grown, I would add new pieces. So now I have my event producer. Her name is Lainey. She comes on about 2 to 3 weeks out really hard.
Okay.
Because once you have the template and it's in the same ballroom, it's pretty much plug and play. So she has her structure and she kills it. I just recently started having a matchmaker on the last show because that's people don't realize that's the hardest part of the whole game because the athletic commission is your boss. You have to follow all their rules and regulations. And then you have to fucking deal with fighters. And I was a very responsible fighter. Most fighters are not responsible. It just is what it is. They just want to fight. They don't want to go get their medicals done. They don't care about this. They don't want to sell tickets. They don't want to do anything but train and fight, which is fine. But they don't realize the stress that puts on me when their meds aren't done and they have to fight in a week. And I'm like, if you don't get your meds done, the commission's not going to let you fight. And they all do this, you know, and then like, oh man, I don't want to get my meds done. I feel like shit. And I'm like, well, yeah, you shouldn't do your meds when you're cutting weight and you feel horrible and you're tired. You just want to fight. Get your meds done the first week, but they all procrastinate.
Right.
You know, almost like most kids when they're taking tests, they study the night before. They don't study leading up. So, and then, you know, you have every fight. Fighters get hurt during camp.
Yeah.
You have to find replacements. The replacements know they're a replacement. They want more money. And it's just like, it was just such a nightmare. So I hired a great matchmaker, and this guy Mel, and he filled my card this time, and it was just seamless. It's nice to not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And then sales are very difficult because I'm targeting a market that generally doesn't watch MMA live.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't even name 3 UFC champions, which is why I always honor somebody at my show so I can have some kind of name recognition. So then I can get that crowd to come. Oh, you're honoring Dolph Lundgren. I would love to meet Dolph. So I'm definitely going to come now.
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of use MMA as like my platform for entertainment on the night. I don't focus on MMA only. But I'm realizing the problem with that is it's more so in LA. Like, for example, for this show, you know, my sales usually come about the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because no one's buying tickets really early, especially in LA. People are very last minute. And an issue is everyone asks me, Steve, who are you going to honor? Who are your celebrities? That's all people care about. No one's like, oh, Steve, who's fighting on your card? I can't wait to see these fighters. So I have to try to get back to getting people to not think about the celebrities so much and care more about the guys who are going to be fighting in the cage.
I was going to ask you that because you're like the world-class networker, man. Your network is insane. I just saw a picture of you with A-Rod last week, man. And
yeah.
So how do you, before we get to the fighter piece, how do you kind of bring some of these celebrities in? Because you've had like Mickey Rourke, you've had Shane Mosley. I mean, just, you know, Steven Seagal, the who's who. I mean, how does that all kind of come about?
Yeah, I would say it's like let me see. I would say it's a 50-50 thing. You know, some of these guys that I just met along the way, just living in Los Angeles and being that guy who's doing something different in MMA, and all those guys love MMA.
Right.
You know, and most of them don't go to the, you know, the UFCs and the local shows because it's actually an impediment, you know, for them to go to a show and have extra security and be inundated by people wanting their picture. By the time they get to their seat, it's like they've been asked to take a picture with every fighter, every manager, every fighter's girlfriend, and ends up being not an enjoyable night for them. So, so when it comes to my show, I only have 250 people. You know, they know it's very exclusive, more apt to come. If they want more security, I'll bring more security for them. And as of now, you know, the fight world and the fight game is a very small community, and everyone seems to know each other.
Yeah.
So I developed a lot of relationships because of the gyms, like, you know, going to train at Wild Card. So Freddie has become a friend, for example.
Yeah.
And aside from that, it's a lot of 1 degrees of separation. I don't always give myself the credit.
Right.
You know, I have a lot of people who know people. You know, so like for the last show, like Dolph Lundgren I got because of Tom Callahan, who's a friend of mine, who's also his sensei or his instructor for Kyokushin karate. Or Mickey Rourke, I got him because a friend of mine, Danny Hester, who was the first classic bodybuilding champion, Mr. Olympia, trains him. So that's how I got Mickey Rourke. So a lot of it has to do with the 1 degree of separation, which is why networking is everything, and building that circle is so important.
Man.
Something that every fighter needs to remember.
I mean, that, and it's like, no matter what you do, it's so much more about the people you know and your reputation with those people based on the kind of work you put in, the kind of person you are. I mean, the last time I applied for a job where I just applied online was like 10 years ago. You know what I mean? You cannot live like that. And, you know, I just think you're living proof of that. And I got to say, the first time I came across your Instagram profile, I was like a little jealous. I'm like, man, you have all these followers. You're running this company. I'm like, man, well, this guy's unbelievable. And then I heard you tell this story about Mickey Rourke where I think it was your in-laws or somebody had you watch this old school Mickey Rourke movie, way old school, and you're like, man, no one knows this shit about this guy, that it's a journey and it's a process, that he had to start there and come back to, you know, now he's a household name. I don't know if you remember the story I'm talking about when you watched that Mickey Rourke film, but it just kind of reinforced to me that, hey, man, everyone's along their journey. You don't know where they're at, so it's tough to compare yourself to others when you think about those networking circles.
Yeah, because when people only know you until once you're in the spotlight.
Right.
But people don't realize how long it takes to get to the spotlight. It's not the lottery. It's not like, oh, I just bought a lottery ticket and all of a sudden now I'm worth $100 million. Like these guys, like say Sylvester Stallone, you know, I mean, hundreds of thousands of hours he had to put in to get to where he is. All of those guys.
Right.
And it's incredible. Or these fighters, like, oh wow, I don't know, Conor McGregor. Yeah, he did an amazing. Or I'd say Floyd Mayweather is a better example. Like Floyd Mayweather, he's a champion. He's a billionaire. He's this. He's that. Well, guess what? He's been boxing since he was like 5 years old.
Right.
Do you know how long he's been training for? He didn't just wake up and just put on gloves and is like the best in the world. Like people only see the final product and they don't realize how long it took to get to the final product.
Exactly. And you talked about Freddie Roach earlier, which made me think of Aaron Pico. You know, I remember Aaron Pico coming up, and in like 2016, he was at the Olympic trials in the finals against Frank Molinaro, and he's 18 years old. And you think back, though, that dude was going around with Valentin Kalika, traveling Russia and Ukraine when he was like a freshman, sophomore in high school. Like, he stopped going to high school just so he could wrestle freestyle. So all those trips, his sophomore, junior, and senior year, no one really saw that. And then at the Olympic trials in 2016, you're seeing this phenom wrestle, and it's like overnight success. But, of course, that's not the case.
Never the case. And I'm glad you mentioned Aaron Pico because he's such a good kid. And he's the one, literally, of every single person that's turned pro in MMA, he was the one I was probably the most excited about. I'm like, oh, this kid's going to fucking smash everyone.
Yeah.
He's learning boxing from Freddie now. And I know his mindset, his mindset is on a whole nother level. And then for him to come in and take that loss against someone he shouldn't have, I was like, holy shit. It goes to show how hard it is when in MMA, because he's not experienced in MMA. Great wrestler, mindset is crazy, but you still have to put all of that together.
Yeah.
So the guys that have been in MMA for 10, 15 years, they naturally know how to put it all together. You know, and I can talk about Aaron Pico. What do you think the future
holds for Aaron Pico? Because my brother and I couldn't be bigger fans. Anytime he would come on, it doesn't matter what show it is, we'd stop the show, we'd all watch it. And it's just heartbreaking to see those losses. And it's almost kind of puzzling because no other wrestler has had that kind of adversity, I guess you could say. I mean, of course there have been, but that high profile of a wrestler, usually they come in, they get to a title fight, and then they kind of bang around from there. What's the future hold for him, in your opinion?
Aaron Pico, his biggest asset is also his biggest flaw, and it's actually his mindset. For example, he's the kind of person that wants to prove everyone wrong all the time because he wants to be the greatest. He wants to be known as being a legend. He and everyone already knows he's the best wrestler in the cage every single time.
Yeah.
So he wants to show everyone that he can throw hands and he can stand up with anyone. The problem is you can't, you know, and he's the kind of kid that if he just wrestled and did ground and pound and smashed, like, I don't know, a
Cormier.
GSP. Yeah, Cormier, or even like a GSP. Like, GSP is not a pure wrestler, but you can't even stop his double leg takedowns, you know? So Aaron Pico needs to stop going in there and trying to bang with guys, because listen, you get clipped with those gloves, it's lights out. I don't care how good you are. And he already got knocked out once, which means, you know, this nerve here has already been moved. So his knockout rate of getting hit is going to be far more than what it used to be. So he just needs to go to his bread and butter. If he just wrestled and just smash guys on the ground, I don't think anyone in Bellator would even stand next to him. Not even a question. His wrestling is too good.
So good. I mean, think about Zane Rutherford, one of the best in the game right now. Pico's 8-0 against him.
Yes.
It's like, people, let's not forget here, 8-0 against Zane. And he beat Stieber when he was 18 years old at that Olympic trials. So to your point, his wrestling's on par. I would love to see him at AKA. Get him up there with Cormier and get him up there with the wrestlers and get that ground and pound style going. But, you know, what do I know?
Look,
you know?
Yeah, but, you know, look at Khabib.
Yeah, exactly.
You
That's
know,
what I'm saying.
This guy's a monster. There's no reason why. I feel like if Aaron Pico was on top of you, he's so relentless. He would smash all of these guys. But again, he wants to just show everyone that he can throw punches, and he punches hard.
Oh, yeah.
Like the way he wrestles, he also punches the same way. But the problem is guess what? You get punched back. If you punch hard, you put everything into it, and you get into those exchanges, somebody's going down. It's like a 50-50 chance, like Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Right.
And every time he's gotten dropped, it was during an exchange, after he already rocked somebody, and then he goes in for the kill. When he could just, when he rocks somebody, double leg takedown, put him on the ground, choke him out, or just ground and pound him. But
yeah,
it's this. He's stubborn.
We
he wants
haven't
to show
seen
everyone.
him do a takedown yet. That even when he wins, it's freaking. I'm like, God, it's so frustrating. But I like that he's taking some time off. I like that he's at Jackson's. And we'll see what happens, man. And I know we're about at the time here. I want to ask you just 3 quick questions that are more so selfish questions for me. Then we'll let you go. Sound good?
Yeah.
Excuse me. So the one is, you have your social media game on point, and I've heard you talk about Gary Vee. You know, what do you attribute your success to, or what's your strategy when it comes to social media?
Just being myself. You know, like there's a lot of people who are influencers and always promoting products, which I'm not a big fan of. And again, like even like I love Gary Vee, but there's so many influencers that do motivational stuff, and it ends up being very repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I hear the same shit over and over and over again. So I just kind of just go with the flow and just do what I love, what I'm passionate about. And I really think that resonates. Like people know when you're being real or you're not being real, you know, and that's what people always say. So being relatable is the most important thing. And obviously, you know, you find your niche. So like for me, like I do a lot of experimenting on what works. I know when I post something about one meal a day, I get so much response, or something with the way I train, I get a lot of response. But if I were to take a picture with a celebrity or a car, I might not get as much response. I probably get more likes, but people want to be relatable.
So you're thinking about it in terms of strategy and of what gets engagement, though. So you are putting some thought into your social media game, because I love that you put an emphasis on it, because it's obviously it's everything in this day and age.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's really hard now. Mm-hmm. You know, back in the day, like I've only been on social media for a couple of years, but you know, it's almost like Bitcoin. The people who got into Instagram 8 years ago, unless you're a super A-lister, those are the people like had 8 million followers.
Right.
Whereas now, because I remember the first 100,000 wasn't that difficult. Now maybe I get 1,000 a month. It's so hard. I'm like, how do I get more followers? But it's really difficult because you get to a point where even I don't follow that many new people.
Mm-hmm.
For me to start following somebody new, it takes a lot.
Right.
And I think that's how most people are. Most people on Instagram now are so set in the people they follow.
Yeah.
They generally don't follow that many new people, and that's just like a motive behind it.
I got to tell you, Gary Vee got me on TikTok, and I'm on TikTok as of this week.
Yeah.
That's the Wild West, baby. That is the fucking Wild West. There's it's crazy. It's a younger crowd, so you got to change the content a little bit. But I feel like the old man in there showing them videos of Joe Williams or Mike Meta. Like I feel like the dad going in there, but it's so new that shit on there is getting 10 times more engagement than Instagram. Only in my first week of being on there. So
yeah, because even Facebook 4 or 5 years ago was everything.
Right.
I go on Facebook maybe once a day, and then it was Instagram is everything, and it still is everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see that shift with TikTok. I don't use TikTok. I did start a TikTok account. I just haven't really thought and figured out how I'm going to do it. Because again, I feel like an old man. What am I going to do to engage with these kids? I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. So I watch my daughter a lot, like what she's doing, who she's following,
right.
And you have to. If you're not watching the next generation, you're not going to evolve. So if the kids now are like TikTok, you got to do it. And one thing you notice with I follow my high school wrestlers now, as well as my daughter. They don't post on Instagram that much.
No.
But they all watch my stories. I'm like, okay, so they're watching, but they're not like engaging anymore. They're not putting any effort in. So TikTok is where they're going. They can just watch a video for 10 seconds, on to the next one.
I'm blown away by how creative these kids are, though, on TikTok.
These
videos are in depth. And, Gary says this all the time, but it's such a good point. Even if you're going on TikTok and you're not, enjoying it, learning how to create videos like that is a skill. Like, these kids are putting so much freaking time into these TikTok videos. I'm blown away by it. Every once in a while, I'll send my brother one because he's off social media, and we're 12 months apart. And so I'll go, dude, look at this freaking video on TikTok. Like, the amount of work these kids put into it, it's a 15-second clip of them lip syncing.
Yeah.
It's hysterical.
And they have like 100,000 views. I'm like, how do they have 100,000 views?
Dude, I was looking at this kid who's, I can't remember his name, but he's going to wrestle at Harvard next year. He's at Wyoming Seminary now, one of the top kids in the country. He has 500,000 followers on TikTok.
Oh my God.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
And then second to last question for you is, you're a guy who loves fitness. Hit us with a typical workout routine for you. How long is it? What are you doing in that workout?
Yeah, so again, I'm the guy who I never go into the gym knowing what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I go in and just feel what I feel, but I do separate. So I'll do push day, a pull day, and like a leg day, and I'll repeat. And I don't take a day off until my body tells me I need to take a day off. Like, I don't believe in the 2 days on, 1 day off. No, I'll go 14 days in a row if I can.
Yep.
And so I wake up one morning and I'm like, I'm just not feeling it. Or if I go to the gym and I'm walking on the treadmill and I just don't feel it that day, I'll just get in my car and go back home.
Gotcha.
So you really have to listen to your body. You can't listen to this when it comes to working out, because everyone always tries to push through things. And when you push through shit, that's when you get hurt. And I know that's the opposite of what Dan Gable or Brands would tell you. And I agree with those guys on that, but I think you do have to train smarter now.
Yeah.
Not harder. And I still train hard as shit, but you still have to be smart, especially at an older age. When you're in your 20s, it's different. But once you get to 35 plus, you have to be so much smarter with the way you train.
You're probably on the extreme of that, though, where you'll go 15 days in a row. The average person, they might go one day and be like, shit, man, I'm a little sore today. So there's definitely a balancing act to that.
And again, because I would never want to make people feel bad, like, oh, I trained so much harder than you. A lot of it, again, has to do with the way your brain is wired. Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of guy, when I go to the gym and I train hard, my endorphins go through the roof.
Right.
But if I were to go outside and road run right now and say, oh, we got to go run 10 miles, I'm miserable. I hate running. But there's other people that get runner's high. I'm like, I don't feel that, but I feel that when I train at a very intense level. And there's some people like my mom, she doesn't go to the gym. She goes to the gym, she's like, I want to go home. Some people just don't feel it. You can't help it, just how your brain's wired.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, and thank God for wrestling, because it's just second nature. You can't go, I can't go a couple days without feeling some tension, or if I am super bogged down with the podcast or whatever I'm working on, and it's been 3 days without working out, which is rare, I start to feel a little weight on the chest. And I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh yeah, haven't worked out in 3 days. Let's get back to the kettlebells or whatever it is. And so I agree
with you.
Yeah. And so last question for you is, we ask everyone this: how did wrestling change your life? Or another way to put it is, what life lessons have you taken away from wrestling that you still use every day?
Embracing failure. Embrace failure and struggle, So my freshman year, like I told you, having a state champion above me and having an all-state guy below me and being a 103 pounder going up to 112, I think my record my first year was like 3 and something. So I literally got my ass whooped every match, got embarrassed all the time, and got my ass whooped in the room every day. But I always wanted more, and I kept on coming back. And I think that's what built me who I am today. Most people can't embrace failure, and they're scared to fail. So, wrestling, when you're on the mat wrestling, you're by yourself in front of the entire crowd, in front of another wrestling team, in front of your own wrestling team. You're so accountable. And if you can lose and come back and do it again in front of the same people and lose again and keep coming back, it builds like iron around your heart. Like your mindset is on a whole nother level.
Yeah, and it's like to endure that and then make leaps and bounds and get better. It's like there's so much self-reflection, and I feel like that's something
So
that
much.
You don't see that much anymore. Like looking inward.
No, you don't. And I always tell these kids now, because whenever they go up against someone that's way better, like a state champion, for example, or someone who's an all-American, I'm always like, listen, they are better than you. I get it. But guess what? A state champion or someone who's all-American has only been on their back a few times in their life. You put them on their back, it's like they are fucking a freshman who never wrestled again. So all you got to do is get them on their back, and they're no different than you. You're probably better. You're better than them if you get them on their back.
Right, that guy's been bridging all month, man. He's got the bridges down. Awesome, man. Well, it's been an honor to talk with you. I was really looking forward to this. And last thing is, where can they find you on social media, and where can they find more about your company and the things you're doing?
Yeah, so my website is www.smashglobal.com. You find everything about my company there. And then for social media, my name's Steve Orosco, or you could probably search Mr. Smash, so mr.smash.
Beautiful, man. Well, like I said, it's been an honor. Had a lot of fun. Have a great day, man, and hope to connect with you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care.